Wife had an affair with my stepfather to snatch the $1 million mansion. Little did she know, my wife Lily had an affair with my stepfather Dan, just to get her hands on a $1 million mansion. Little did she know the mansion is actually mine. I am in such a mess that I feel embarrassed to even admit my situation. And by embarrassment, I mean core humiliation. How else do I say that my wife of 7 years is cheating on me with my stepdad? Yes, Lily slept with my mom's husband. I'm a 38-year-old man married for 7 years to Lily, also 38. Our relationship seemed normal with the usual ups and downs. The downs were mostly because Lily felt I was too attached to my mom. She even called me a mama's boy. Now I won't defend it because my mom is no longer alive. She passed away 2 years ago. I'm glad I loved her the way she deserved. She raised me alone and gave me the best of everything she could. My mom was a single parent until she met Dan 10 years ago. Dan was divorced and in his early 50s when he married Mom. I never understood what Mom saw in him to marry him after being single for 2 decades. Dan was pretty much non-existent to me when Mom was alive. I visited her twice a week, but my conversations with Dan never went beyond formal greetings and a smile. I don't know why, but I just couldn't accept him as a father figure. However, I never showed this to Mom. I was happy she had a companion in her last days. After her demise, there was no reason for Dan to exist in my life. I didn't even meet him after Mom's funeral, though he was still living in my mom's house. He only became a concern when I found him sitting with Lily, his arm wrapped around hers. It wasn't a friendly or elderly embrace. I didn't like their body language or their chemistry. It was weird because of our family dynamics. Like I mentioned, I was never close to my stepdad, and neither was Lily. Seeing such comfort between them was very unsettling for me. I was in my car, and they were sitting in a roadside KFGC. I had left the office early that day to meet an old friend. The place where I saw them is far from my house and even my office. I usually don't go to that area. I went to meet my friend but was distracted most of the time. My friend kept asking if something was bothering me. I just said it was work. How do I tell him what I saw on my way? When I got home, I didn't think and confronted Lily about seeing her with Dan. She turned pale and was lost for words. Then she said, "Yeah, I met him for lunch." I asked her why all of a sudden. She said she bumped into him and he offered to have lunch together. The way I was staring at her, she knew I saw something I shouldn't have. She said, "Your stepdad was really upset about losing your mom. I was trying to console him. The poor old man is lonely and has no one to talk to. That's why he held my hands while expressing his grief." You see, I didn't tell her I saw him holding her hands. I saw him wrapping his arms around her, and the way they were talking, it didn't look like he was sad or mourning my mom. They weren't laughing, but their body language was flirtatious. I didn't say anything, but I didn't buy her excuse. I decided to sleuth the matter by myself before any further confrontation. Lily is a nail artist at a beauty salon, so she works weekends and is off on weekdays. It was never an issue between us until recently, when Lily became too occupied with her work. We were having regular fights because she wasn't giving time to our relationship. She fought back, saying I was being needy after Mom's death. She said that earlier I used to visit my mom twice a week, so her absence didn't bother me as much. She was wrong. I used to visit Mom on weekends, and on those days when Lily had work, I always made sure to come home on time to spend with her. Before, she used to fight that I was a mama's boy. Now she was saying I was needy. While all this was still going on, I saw her with my stepdad, and that added to my fury. A few weeks later, it was Thanksgiving. Yeah, I'm talking about the last Thanksgiving that just passed. Lily insisted that we invite Dan. I was surprised at her direct suggestion. She said Dan was living alone and had no one, so as extended family we should invite him. I told her she never invited them when Mom was alive. She replied, "Yeah, because they had each other to celebrate the evening and now that poor old man is alone." Ultimately, I gave in. I actually wanted to see how they behaved in front of me. I won't say they were normal, but they didn't do anything that would have caused suspicion if I didn't know the truth. I was silent most of the time. I was never fond of him, and my suspicions about him made me resent his presence. I felt he also understood that I did not like him. Overall, it was an awkward dinner with both of us eating silently and Lily trying to break the silence with some stupid topic, only to get a fake smile from both of us. It was getting very difficult for me to live with a heavy heart, so I decided to chalk out a plan. I thought of checking her phone, but that didn't work because her phone was locked, and I didn't want to ask for the password, as she would get suspicious. So I came up with another plan. I told Lily that I would be going out of town for a couple of days for work purposes. On the supposed day, I left home early and went to my office as usual. But before that, I had planted a GPS device in Lily's car and was tracking it remotely. Just before the afternoon, she drove to Dan's place. I wanted to catch her red-handed, but I was worried that if I showed up and they were just sitting and chatting, I would look like a fool. So I asked my friend Dave for help. I told him about my suspicions and requested him to visit Dan. It was a very safe plan. I told him to record them if he found them doing anything outrageous. The house lock was password protected, and I was just hoping that Dan didn't change the PIN. Dave was worried that Dan might suspect him of sneaking into the house. I told him to just say that the front door was open, and he was there to check on him. The main door didn't open into the living area. There was a small passage that led to the living room, so there was no way they would suspect him of unlocking the door. After a lot of convincing, he agreed. He went inside but couldn't find them in the hallway. He then peeked inside the bedroom with his phone camera switched on. He had kept the phone in his shirt pocket with the camera popping out so that they didn't suspect him. He saw the two of them without clothes, cuddling each other. He then cried, "Sorry," and left the house before any of them realized. Dan followed him outside, asking what he was doing there. Dave said that he was just there to check on him, but it's okay. He would come later. He sat inside his car and drove off before any confrontation with Dan or Lily. But my friend is so stupid. Instead of opening the back camera, his front camera was open the whole time and nothing got recorded except Dan and Lily yelling at Dave's sudden appearance. Anyway, I got the confirmation that I needed. I had already packed 2 sets of clothes and my toiletries before leaving the house that day, so I went to Dave's house. His wife was out of town at her parents' house, so he insisted that I stay with him until all this was sorted. Lily knows that Dave would have told me the truth. She messaged me asking when I would come home. I didn't reply. Yes, I ghosted her. She has been blowing up my phone with endless texts and calls. She thinks I'm out of town for work. It happened 4 days ago. I have contacted a lawyer virtually. I don't want to see her face ever again. I'll serve her with the divorce papers and get her evicted from my house. It took 10 days for the lawyer to send the divorce papers. Lily was just not ready to sign the papers and wanted a discussion. My lawyer suggested that we go for an out-of-court settlement if possible because that would substantially reduce our time and money. See, I'm a sales guy with a regular job. I have a certain limit in funds to spend on lawyers and also limited leave to attend the court case. So I agreed to a meeting in the lawyer's presence. But when I went for the meeting, she insisted on having a private conversation with me. I resisted, but my lawyer asked me to go for it but not say or commit to anything which she demanded. He laid out a certain framework to keep my meeting within it. No touching, no hugging, no confessions at all. I felt disgusted at her presence. She tried to hug me, but I pushed her away. She said it was all a misunderstanding. After reading so many cheating stories online, I know what all cheaters say. I was like, "Yeah, sure, you were trying to help out a poor old man from his loneliness, right?" She said whatever Dave saw was true, and she is not denying it, but it was only cuddling and nothing else. Yes, of course, cuddling without clothes. But this was not enough. What she said next blew my mind. She said she did that to safeguard our future. Really? How the hell? She was like, "See, your mom left all her wealth to Dan, and now if he marries someone else, that woman would be entitled to that wealth. Your family's property would go to someone else." I said, "That's why you messed around with my stepdad. so that you can become my stepmother and take my mother's wealth. Do you see the complexities in this family dynamic?" I was feeling dizzy with her BS, so I stormed out of the meeting room. After I came back, my lawyer asked for the details of the conversation, and I told him everything. He cracked up for a moment, but was interested in knowing about the inheritance my mother had left. My mom had left a house that she had inherited from her uncle. It was a huge mansion, way beyond my means. Interestingly, Lily always had an eye on that mansion. After our marriage, she even insisted that we move into the mansion. I was happy that Lily wanted to move in with my mother, but no. Lily wanted Mom to move out to my apartment while we took up her mansion. But I denied it. It was her house, and why should she leave? Lily said, "You are the only son of your mom, so that house would come to you. So why not move in there right now?" This led to frequent fights between us. So one day I just lied to her that Mom had willed that house to Dan. And you see what price I had to pay for that lie. Lily went after my stepdad so that she could have the house. There was one more piece of information that Lily didn't know. After Mom's demise, I didn't transfer the ownership of the house to my name. I wanted Dan to live there until he wanted to. By transferring it to my name, it would be like he was living on my property, and I'm sure he was not going to like it. Also, the name transfer is expensive, and I was running short of money during that time, so I let it be. And I'm glad I did not transfer it, because Lily would have been entitled to half of the property during our divorce, or probably she wouldn't have messed around with Dan in that case. I don't know, but a cheater is always a cheater in any situation. Yeah, my mom had willed that house to me, but Lily didn't know that. Lily wanted me to have second thoughts about the divorce. She said that she would soon lure Dan to gift her that house, and if I don't divorce her, the mansion would be ours. I laughed at her proposal and said, "No, thank you for the offer. Good luck with your mansion." She smirked and said, "You're losing a lot by this divorce." I smiled and said, "I don't give a damn." I don't know if she was really that dumb always, or if she was just acting to save her ass from the humiliation, but I don't care. Lily knew that I had no substantial wealth except for the savings in our joint account, which was split and divided between us. I'm feeling so relieved after the divorce was finalized. At any moment, if Lily got to know the truth about the ownership of the mansion, she would have never divorced me. And I cannot share my mom's inheritance with that conniving woman. Lily dug her grave by confessing her intentions behind dating Dan because I was going to use that against her to drive Dan away from her life. I saw Dan picking her up from the court and assisting her with all legal matters during our divorce. I was just waiting for the divorce to be over to burst her bubble and then see her reaction. Now that it is done, the next thing I'm going to do is destroy my love for Lily. After my divorce was finalized, I texted the details of Lily's affair to my stepfather. I cannot share my mom's inheritance with that conniving woman. Lily dug her grave by confessing her intentions behind dating Dan because I was going to use that against her to drive Dan away from her life. I saw Dan picking her up from the court and assisting her with all legal matters during our divorce. I was just waiting for the divorce to be over to burst her bubble and then see her reaction. Now that it is done, the next thing I'm going to do is destroy my love for Lily. After my divorce was finalized, I texted the details of Lily's confession to Dan. He was like, "You know that your mom's will disinherits you?" I said, "Yeah, I have her will, but Lily doesn't know, and she is going to ask you to give the mansion to her." I was not doing any good service to him by revealing the truth. I just wanted to burst Lily's bubble. The poor girl was dreaming of having my mom's mansion. Dan told me that of late, Lily was indirectly asking him about his will and who was going to get his inheritance, but he never understood her intentions because he didn't have any wealth to his name. I didn't want to have any bro code with Dan, so I left the conversation on that note. After a while, I got a call from Lily. Usually I wouldn't have responded to it, but this time I did because I knew what it was about. She was yelling from the other end, "Why didn't you tell me that your mother had willed the house to your name?" I was licking this old man's ass quite literally to safeguard your property, and you, $1 HLA, destroyed me instead." I was just laughing at her abuses because they were coming from a place of hurt. I said, "Thank you so much, and good luck with your licking game." I hung up the call and blocked her. A few days later, she called me again from an unknown number, maybe from her friends or colleagues. She told me that Dan had broken up with her. Somehow he got to know that she was with him just for the inheritance, and now, when the truth came out, he dumped her. He called her a greedy whore. She was abusing him and said she was trying to help him cope with the loneliness. Yet he turned against her. I don't know why she was still trying to pose as a pious woman when her truth had already come out. I sarcastically replied, "Yes, you have been licking everyone selflessly and only for others' good. You have no underlying intention." She said she was with Dan for my sake so that she could get the mansion for me. Now she is saying that she was trying to help Dan cope with the loss and loneliness. Wow, such a pure soul she was. She didn't give up there. She tried all means to contact and attack me, pleading with me, sometimes gaslighting me to get back together. She showed up at my house, my office, and even at some of the regular public places I went. It's so unbelievable that she showed up at my gym and tried to corner me to speak to her. It was a hell of a nightmare, but I ignored her as if she was just a stranger to me. Technically, she was a stranger because our divorce was over. After the dust had settled from my divorce with Jenny, I decided to get on with my life. Jenny, with her sneaky ways and manipulative tactics, was no longer a part of my daily existence, and that alone brought a sense of relief. But then I received a call from Jenny. Normally I would have ignored it, but this time I picked up. "Why didn't you tell me about your mother's will?" she screamed from the other end. "I was cozying up to that old fool thinking I'd secure your mom's mansion, and you let me walk into that trap blind." Her voice was laced with anger and hurt, which only made me laugh. "Thanks for the effort, Jenny," I replied, chuckling, "but your game is over. Good luck with your next victim." I hung up and blocked her number. It didn't end there. A few days later, she called again from an unknown number. "Dan broke up with me," she cried. "He found out I was with him for the inheritance. He called me a greedy whore." I could practically hear the tears in her voice. She went on about how she was just trying to help him cope with his loneliness, but he turned against her. "Sure, Jenny," I said sarcastically. "You've always been the selfless one, licking everyone for their own good." She claimed she was with Dan for my sake, to get the mansion for me. Now she was saying she was trying to help Dan cope with his loss. Her lies were getting more ridiculous by the minute. Jenny didn't stop there. She tried every means possible to get in touch with me. She'd show up at my house, my office, and even at places she knew I frequented. One day she had the nerve to corner me at my gym. It was like living in a nightmare. But I treated her like a ghost, like she didn't exist. After all, she was nothing more than a stranger to me now. It wasn't long before I started getting messages from mutual friends. They were telling me how Jenny was painting me as the villain in our story, claiming I ruined her life. It was amusing at first, but then it started to get on my nerves. Jenny was relentless, and her lies were spreading like wildfire. One day I decided to confront her. I called her from a new number, knowing she'd pick up. "Jenny, you've got to stop this nonsense," I told her. "You're making a fool out of yourself." She started to cry, begging me to take her back, saying she couldn't live without me. "I'm done with your games, Jenny," I said firmly. "You need to move on, and so do I." I hung up feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. Jenny was a master manipulator, but I was no longer under her spell. Life started to get back to normal. I threw myself into work, spent more time with friends, and even started dating again. It felt good to be free from Jenny's toxic grasp. But every now and then, I'd get a reminder of the chaos she'd caused. A random message from an old friend or a memory popping up on social media. It was a reminder of how far I'd come and how much I'd grown. Months passed, and I heard less and less from Jenny. She'd finally gotten the message, or maybe she found a new target. Either way, I was grateful for the peace. I focused on rebuilding my life, making new memories, and leaving the past behind. But then, out of the blue, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Jenny. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a long, rambling letter about how she'd changed, how she realized the error of her ways, and how she hoped we could be friends. It was pathetic, really. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Jenny was a part of my past, a chapter I was glad to close. I kept the letter as a reminder of what I'd been through and how I'd come out stronger on the other side. In the end, I learned a lot from my time with Jenny. I learned about betrayal, manipulation, and the strength it takes to walk away from a toxic relationship. I learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is let go and move on. And most importantly, I learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. So here's to new beginnings, to leaving the past where it belongs, and to never looking back. Because life is too short to waste on people who don't deserve your time or your love. And I'm ready to embrace whatever comes next. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm after cutting Jenny out for good. I was moving on, making new friends, and even starting to enjoy the dating scene again. It felt like the dark cloud she'd brought into my life was finally lifting. Then, out of nowhere, I ran into her at the grocery store. I almost didn't attempt to recognize her at first. She looked worn out, like the stress of her scheming had finally caught up with her. "Rick, wait!" she called after me as I tried to avoid her. I stopped, more out of curiosity than anything else. "What do you want, Jenny?" I asked, not bothering to hide my annoyance. "I just wanted to apologize," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I messed up. I was selfish and cruel. I don't know what I was thinking." Her apology was so out of character that it caught me off guard. This was the woman who VJJTMD lied, cheated, and manipulated without a second thought. Was she actually feeling remorse now? "Jenny, it VDJTM's too late for apologies," I said firmly. "You made your choices, and now you VJ'd me got to live with them." She looked like she wanted to argue, but then just nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand," she whispered. "I just needed you to know." I walked away without looking back, feeling a strange sense of closure. It wasn't VJTM'd that her apology changed anything, but it felt like the final nail in the coffin of our toxic relationship. A few weeks later, I got a call from my buddy, Steve. "Hey man, you won't believe this," he said, sounding excited. "I just saw Jenny with some new guy at the bar. Looks like Chev DTM's moved on pretty fast." "Good for her," I replied, genuinely not caring. Jenny was no longer my problem, and her actions were just a reminder of why I was better off without her. I continued focusing on my own life. I took up new hobbies like hiking and fishing, things Jenny never had any interest in. It felt good to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried under the weight of our dysfunctional marriage. Then, one evening, I got a message from an old mutual friend, Sarah. "Hey, Rick, I just wanted to check in on you," she wrote. "I heard about everything that went down with Jenny. IVDJTMM, sorry you had to go through that." We ended up chatting for hours, reminiscing about old times and catching up on each other VJTM's lives. It was refreshing to talk to someone who knew both the good and the bad but wasn't trying to manipulate or deceive me. Sarah and I started hanging out more, and I realized how much IVGTMD missed having a genuine connection with someone. There was no drama, no hidden agenda, just two people enjoying each other VDTM's company. One night, as we were sitting by the lake, watching the sunset, Sarah turned to me and said, "You know, Rick, IVDJ Timmy, I'm really glad we reconnected. You've JDM. You've always been a good guy, and you deserve so much better than what you had with Jenny." "Thanks, Sarah," I said, feeling a warmth in my chest that I had felt in a long time. I'm glad too. As time went on, Sarah and I grew closer, and I started to see a future that didn't include the shadows of my past. It wasn't always easy, and there were days when the memories of Jenny VTM's betrayal would creep back in, but I was determined not to let them control my life anymore. I learned that healing takes time and that ITVDJTM's okay to lean on others when you need support. I also learned that real love doesn't VGATMT come with strings attached or hidden motives. ATVJTM's about trust, respect, and mutual care. Looking back, IVJTMM grateful for the lessons IVDJTMV learned and the strength IVJTMV gained. Jenny might have tried to break me, but in the end she only made me stronger. And for that, IVJTM will always be thankful. So Herev DATMs to moving forward, to new beginnings, and to finding happiness in the most unexpected places. Because life is full of surprises, and sometimes the best ones come when you least expect them. Things were finally looking up for me. After my run-in with Jenny at the grocery store, I thought IVJTMD seen the last of her. But of course, life had a way of throwing curveballs. One afternoon, as I was enjoying a quiet day at home, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hey Rick, ITVDJTM's Jenny. I know you VJTMV blocked me, but I really need to talk." I stared at the message, feeling a mix of irritation and curiosity. Against my better judgment, I replied, "What do you want, Jenny?" Her response came quickly. "I need your help. IVDJTMM in trouble, and I don't VDTMTT have anyone else to turn to." Part of me wanted to ignore her, but another part was curious about what kind of mess Chev J. Mead gotten herself into this time. I agreed to meet her at a nearby coffee shop, figuring it couldn't HMT hurt to hear her out. When I walked in, I spotted Jenny right away. She looked disheveled and anxious, a far cry from the confident, manipulative woman IVDJTM known. She saw me and waved me over, her eyes pleading. "Rick, thank you for coming," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't jitum to know who else to ask." "What digitum's going on, Jenny?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She took a deep breath and started to explain. Apparently her latest relationship had ended badly, and she was now facing some serious financial troubles. Chev VDTMD lost her job and was struggling to make ends meet. "I know IVJTMV've made mistakes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But IVDJTMM really trying to turn my life around. I just need a little help to get back on my feet." I felt a pang of sympathy, but also a sense of caution. Jenny had lied and manipulated before, and I wasn't VJ Tommy Teat about to let her drag me down again. "I'm sorry you've going through this, Jenny," I said slowly. "But I can VJ TMT get involved. You need to find a way to sort this out on your own." Her face crumpled, and she looked like she was about to argue, but then she just nodded. "I understand," she whispered. "IVDJ Tim will figure something out." I left the coffee shop feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt guilty for not helping, but another part knew IVDJTM made the right decision. Jenny had to learn to stand on her own 2 feet. A few days later, I got a call from Sarah. "Hey, Rick, you free this weekend? I thought we could go hiking." I agreed, eager for the distraction. We spent the day exploring a new trail, talking and laughing like old friends. It was exactly what I needed to clear my head and remind myself of the positive changes in my life. As we sat on a rock overlooking a beautiful valley, Sarah turned to me and said, "You know, Rick, you've been through a lot, but you've come out stronger. IVDJTMM proud of you." Her words touched me more than I expected. "Thanks, Sarah," I said, smiling. "I couldn't have done it without good friends like you." We stayed there for a while, just enjoying the view and each other Viditum's company. It felt like a turning point, a moment of peace and clarity amidst all the chaos. In the weeks that followed, I focused on building a new life for myself. I took up new hobbies, spent more time with friends, and continued to distance myself from the negativity of the past. Jenny tried to contact me a few more times, but I ignored her messages, determined to move forward. One evening, Sarah and I were having dinner when she asked, "Rick, have you thought about what you want for the future, where you see yourself in a few years?" I paused, considering her question. "IVJ Tom, not sure," I admitted. but I know I want to keep moving forward, to keep growing and finding happiness in the little things." Sarah smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I think you Vujamar on the right track," she said softly, "and I'll be here to support you, whatever happens." Her words filled me with a sense of hope and determination. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a clear path ahead of me, free from the shadows of the past. As I looked around the table at the people who had become my new family, I realized that I was finally at peace. Jenny and her manipulations were behind me, and the future was full of endless possibilities. And with Sarah by my side, I knew I could face anything that came my way. So Herevdij TMs to new beginnings, to the strength that comes from overcoming adversity, and to the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Because no matter what life throws at you, there DJ Tim's always a way forward, and always something worth fighting for. After my meeting with Jenny, I knew I had made the right choice to walk away for good. My focus shifted entirely to building a future that didn't VDJ Temti include her or the drama she brought with her. I continued spending more time with Sarah, who had become a rock in my life. Her kindness and genuine care were like a balm to my wounded heart. One Saturday, Sarah and I decided to take a road trip to a nearby town. We packed a picnic and set off early in the morning, enjoying the drive and the beautiful countryside. As we sat by a peaceful lake, eating our sandwiches, Sarah turned to me with a serious look on her face. "Rick, IVJJ Tim have been thinking a lot about us," she began. "I know we VJ Tim both been through a lot, and I don't want to rush things, but I can VD to help feeling like we have something special here." Her words caught me off guard, but in a good way. IVDJ been feeling the same way, but hadn't VJTMT found the right moment to bring it up. "I feel it too, Sarah," I admitted. "You VD Tim, you've been a big part of my healing, and IVDJ Tim, I'm so grateful for you. I want to see where this goes." We sat there for a while, holding hands and enjoying the moment. It felt like a new chapter was beginning, one filled with hope and possibility. In the following weeks, things continued to improve. I found a better job, one that I actually enjoyed, and started making plans for the future. Sarah and I grew closer, and it became clear that we were building something real and lasting. One evening, as we were having dinner at my place, Sarah looked at me with a mischievous glint in her eye. "I have a surprise for you," she said, pulling out an envelope. I opened it to find 2 tickets to a concert by my favorite band. "Sarah, this is amazing. How did you know?" "I have my ways," she replied with a smile. "I thought it would be a great way to celebrate everything we've been through and how far we've come." The concert was incredible. We sang along to every song, danced, and had the time of our lives. It was the perfect way to mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As we drove home that night, I couldn't tempt help but reflect on everything that had happened. Jenny VJJTM's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also led me to a place of strength and growth. Meeting Sarah had been a blessing, and I knew I was on the right path. Life wasn't VDJTMT perfect, and there were still challenges ahead, but I felt ready to face them. IVJTMD learned that real happiness comes from within, and that surrounding yourself with good people makes all the difference. One day, Sarah and I decided to take a walk in the park where we first reconnected. As we strolled along the familiar paths, we talked about our hopes and dreams for the future. "Rick," Sarah said, stopping to look at me, "IVDJ team, I've never been this happy. I feel like we've DJTM Dar building something truly special." "I feel the same way," I replied, taking her hand. "I never thought IVJTM'd find happiness again after everything with Jenny. But you've shown me what real love looks like." We continued walking, the future bright and full of promise. Jenny was a part of my past, a chapter that had taught me valuable lessons but no longer held power over me. In the end, I realized that sometimes life takes unexpected turns, and what seems like the end can actually be a new beginning. Jenny VDJTM's betrayal had shattered me, but it also led me to discover my own strength and find true happiness with Sarah. So hair of DATMs to the future, to love, and to the endless possibilities that lie ahead. Because no matter what happens, their VAJJTMs always hope, always a way forward, and always something worth fighting for. As we stood there watching the sunset together, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be, and for the first time in a long time I felt truly at peace.